Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss A Good Year, starring Russell Crowe, Albert Finney, Marion Cotillard, Abby Cornish, Tom Hollander, and Freddie Highmore, directed by Ridley Scott. Now, I've seen a little bit of this movie, and I remember thinking, what a ludicrous story. It's so predictable, but how predictable is it? I walked out of the movie theater not wondering how it's going to end and didn't give a crap. So let's see how this goes. Let's get into the movie. We open around the year 1981 with a young Max Skinner, played by Freddie Highmore, living in with his uncle Henry, played by Albert Finney, in France. Because his parents have unfortunately died before the movie ever started, as he learns how to play chess with him while having a glass of wine, and his uncle Henry has a farm of wine as he enjoys making wine. Despite him not a wine drinker, but I did like the relationship between Max and his Uncle Henry because it works well. As we move on to 25 years later, with Max as an adult, played by Russell Crowe, is a successful stockbroker in London. And I get the impression that since this is my first two viewings, well, two and a half, I'll say, of this movie, that because the first time I didn't watch all the way through. But anyways, this movie that's in this movie that he's Jordan Belfort from The Wolf of Wall Street, which would have came out about 6 years before this movie came out, and he gets a letter saying his family, his only family, Uncle Henry, has passed away, and Max gets to keep his farmhouse in France. And there's something about this movie that I don't like, and that is how predictable it is, like I brought up at the beginning. As it feels like one of those comedies where a successful businessman is left with the house and he chooses to sell and starts loving the place. And am I getting that? Am I getting there correctly? I think so, because this movie is, like I said, like twice already, predictable. Max gets to France and rents a mini car with a GPS that is very annoying. And where have I seen this before? In 2003, in a movie called Just Married. While on the way to the farmhouse, he calls his assistants Kenny and Gemma to find the farmhouse. And I'm thinking, doesn't he know that how to get there, or has it been that long of a time since he's been there? But he does eventually find the farmhouse, and he walks around remembering how he plays tennis with Uncle Henry. And the cinematography in the farmhouse and in France is gorgeous. And I love the location on where this movie is taking place, but the characters are mediocre at best. And the acting was fine in my opinion, but to be honest, I could go with or without the characters in this movie in my opinion. Max bumps into Francis Duflot and his precious doggy as they meet again many years later while the dog peed on Max's foot, and he makes himself look some food for himself until Francis's wife, Ludivine, and he goes outside and his boss, Sir Nigel, wants a meeting with Max as he drives while on the phone, which is super dangerous, by the way, folks. And at some point, he drops the phone and almost kills Fanny Chanel, played by Marion Cotillard, while on the way to Nathalie Ozet, who is the real estate agent in France, and he wants to sell the house until Francis talks him out of it, but denies it because he drives to the airport but forgot to take photos of the property. And this is so far pretty damn predictable, and despite this is based on a novel, I'm not sure why director Ridley Scott intended on making this novel into a movie. Gemma calls Max nonstop while he gets stuck in the pool that has no water, and at one point Fanny finds Max's car and property as well, as Max stuck in the pool while he can't get out of the pool, so she turns on the water to the pool until eventually he finds a way out of there with some muddied up water. And Gemma tells Max Sir Nigel said he's suspended for a week as a stockbroker. And Max decides to stay at the farmhouse for the week as he wakes up the next day and finds a scorpion in his bedroom. And the writing in this is weak, but fine. And unlike the last time with Kingdom of Heaven, I can follow this movie much, much better than that piece of crap of a movie. as this feels like one of director Ridley Scott's weakest movies I've enjoyed, and keep in mind, I am enjoying myself while watching the movie, both times I saw it for the show. Francis stays at the house and helps out with the pool and around the house as they work on it together, while Max remembers the memories of his Uncle Henry. In one scene, he meets Henry's daughter, Christy Roberts, played by Abby Cornish, and introduces herself to Max as her cousin. And he makes an extra bedroom for her, and this character was bland, while Max goes into town and meets with Nathalie, and afterhand asks Fanny why did she drown him, as he didn't realize he almost killed her, as she explains it to him, and their chemistry was okay at best, but not the best thing about the movie, in my opinion, as Miss Cotillard is a better actress than what the material gives her in this movie. Max and Francis fix the tennis court and play the game of tennis for a bit, while the dog is watching the game and being cute at the same time, as Max goes around the house and sees a memory of his Uncle Henry while living with him as a kid, and has some food and wine with Christy, which honestly should go in the editing room floor because this movie is a little too long. While Max calls his assistant Charlie and hangs up rather quickly and goes into town and goes to the restaurant where Fanny works at and decides to help out at the restaurant with Fanny reluctantly, liking it as he does help, and the scene was pretentious. Max asks Fanny for a drink to apologize to her for almost killing her, but she says she's not interested. And next thing you know, he sits by the fountain and reluctantly accepts, Fanny, by saying Sunday night at 8 o'clock p.m., which was rather cute, while Max and Ludivine sees Ludivine and she invites him to the DeFlaunt house, while Christy chats with Francis and Charlie decides to come by, and Max gets to the DeFlaunt house and have dinner with them, as well as Christy, until Christy gets sick, and this is fine acting. While the scene was nice to watch, Christy loses one of her shoes, and Max carries her back to the house and puts her to bed, and next day comes, Max gets a call from Amos as he acts disrespectfully, while Gemma shows Max Kenny is on his chair once again, while land inspector with a land inspector or something like that, and has a chat with him while giving Max a bad review, and the editing in this scene was choppy, and I didn't like that scene at all. While Christy threw the papers in the pool as she learned Max is selling the property, and she's against it, and she wants to leave the next day, while Max sees a photograph of Henry and Christy when they were younger, and this scene was a little slow. Charlie arrives at the property and comes in to take his job and shove it up his ass. And Max decides to let him stay in the house, and Max calls Kenny and Amos suggestively sell more stocks back in London, while Christy asks Charlie to look at something as he puts ice on her back, and Max has dinner with Fanny and drinks some expensive wine as they watch a concert with an old movie, and they learn things about each other. And as it starts to rain, everybody comes inside while they still sit out in the rain, which is a little humorous. And she learns everything about Max and his Uncle Henry, as he says he loves the location of France. And they smooch up a storm, and the movie is working, while at the same time it's pretty predictable at this point. Fanny has to leave to go to work at the restaurant as Max has a talk with Charlie, and he thinks about staying in France, while Charlie is thinking he should go back to London, as we see a memory of Max, and while Uncle Henry spying on Francis trimming the plants, and Francis talks about Max leaving the place, and as he's already sold it, which is what Uncle Henry had feared, as Francis is upset about it, as Max thinks about how to drink good wine because of Uncle Henry, while Christy says goodbye to Charlie and is encountered by Max and brings her a note that Uncle Henry gave to Max, but it was meant for Christy, as she reads it to read, as it's her house now, as Max goes back to London and back to work, and Kenny gets got fired because he got what he deserved for working with the enemy, who happens to be Amos. And I can't believe he chose to go back to London, as this was a bad choice. I mean, bad. Max comes back to Gemma, kissing her cheeks, while Sir Nigel comes to the office and sees Max and gives her his desk to Gemma. And he thinks about how he's met Fanny when he was a little boy and she was a little girl, which was brought up so late in the movie as she kisses Max on the lips since kids, as he quits his job selling his apartment in London and moves to France and goes to Fanny's restaurant as he proposes his hand in marriage. And we move on to the last scene where Christy is the owner of the house and is Francis's boss. And they argue quite a bit, and they have people over and get a call from Charlie and hangs around Fanny, and who are madly in love. And the climax was cute, but unfortunately, where have I seen this before? Because it was predictable. And what will my score be? Well, let's find out in the rating. I'll give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. The movie is predictable from start to finish, and the acting was fine, but the characters were mediocre at best. And in my opinion, as I could go with or without these characters. And the cinematography in France is gorgeous compared to London, as it looked like it was raining. As I liked looking at France more than London in this movie. The writing is fine, but weak, as this is director Ridley Scott's one of his weakest movies I have enjoyed. And I did enjoy myself watching the movie, both viewings I saw it for the show, but the chemistry between Russell Crowe and Marion Cotillard wasn't the best thing about the movie, in my opinion, as Miss Cotillard is a better actress than what the material gives her in this movie. The movie was cute, but fine. What did make this movie the way I'm giving it a middle 5? Was the location of France, as this is a mild recommendation, as the performances are fine. Like, I could like it or hate it, but it's not a 5.0, it's the middle 5, it's 5.5. But it was an okay time at the movies, and at the end of the day, this was just an okay movie. So the mildest recommendations, as it earns a 5.5 out of 10 for me. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with American Gangster. And until then, have a good rest of the day, guys.